2 years ago, my body began to fall apart, and no one could explain why. I gained almost 38 pounds, slipped into a deep depression, stopped sleeping, lost hair in clumps, and lived with a heart that thrashed out of rhythm. The best endocrinologist I knew, my husband Dr. Grant Hale, told me it was just stress and early perimenopause. He gave me vitamins, a mild sleep aid, and told me not to self-diagnose. I believed him. I shouldn't have. Not even close. My name is Marjorie Hale. I'm 40 years old, and for a long time I thought I was just fading. For 2 years straight, my body stopped feeling like mine. I packed on 38 pounds in under 9 months, even though my habits hadn't changed. Sleep turned into 3 to 5 hours of broken dozing. My hair came out in clumps at the shower drain. My heart would sprint for no reason in the grocery line. I cried in the car on the way to work and had no idea why. And the whole time, the person I trusted most kept telling me nothing was wrong. Grant, my husband, runs Hale Wellness Endocrine Clinic here in Nashville. To everyone else, Dr. Grant Hale is the polished endocrinologist who gives talks at Vanderbilt and posts clean little infographics about hormone balance on Instagram. To me, for 18 years, he'd been the solid guy who handled anything medical and liked his shirts starched and his schedule under control. So when the panic attacks started on I-65 and I began messing up basic numbers at my accounting job, I went to Grant first. He'd touch my wrist, count my pulse, sigh. Em con thong con viek was his Vietnamese when we were younger. Now it was only English. Marge, you're stressed from work. You're hitting perimenopause early. It happens. You're 40. This is textbook. I have sinned. He wrote tiny prescriptions, low-dose sleeping pills, multivitamins, a little anti-anxiety sample pack, and lined the bottles up on the counter between the coffee maker and the toaster. Take these, and promise me something, he said one night, standing in the kitchen with the under-cabinet lights glowing on his white coat. Don't go down a Google rabbit hole. That stuff will convince you you're dying if you sneeze twice. He was a board-certified endocrinologist. I was a senior staff accountant who colored inside the lines. So I believed him. Or at least I tried to. But every month, it felt like someone was turning down the dimmer switch on my life. No libido. No energy. My world shrank to my couch, my spreadsheets, and the soft gray fog in my brain. Friends invited me out. I said no. I started avoiding mirrors. And Grant? The more I crumbled, the busier he got. Late nights, finishing charts, early mornings rounding, conferences in Atlanta and Denver. His side of the bed got colder long before I realized how cold his heart had become. Number 1. The crack. Panic in the parking garage. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in April. Grant had flown to Denver for a 3-day endocrine conference. He kissed my cheek in the driveway at 5 a.m., his garment bag over his shoulder. Be good to yourself, okay? He said, brushing my hair back from my face. We'll tweak your meds when I get back. This is just a rough patch. By 9:15, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage at the firm, hands locked around the steering wheel while my heart galloped like it wanted out of my chest. My breath came in short. Useless sips. The world narrowed to the dashboard clock 9:17 and the smear of my own reflection in the windshield. There was no fight with a boss. No crisis. Just still concrete and fluorescent lights and my body acting like a truck was about to hit us. That's when a thought came. Clear and cold, right through the fog, is greater than something is being done to you. Not stress. Not willpower. Something. When the wave finally ebbed, I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers and did the exact thing Grant had forbidden. I Googled independent endocrinologist, Nashville second opinion. The same name kept popping up. Dr. Sarah Whitford, Vanderbilt Endocrine Center. Patients talked about her like she listened, like she didn't dismiss symptoms because they didn't fit a neat box. I called. By some fluke, there was a cancellation that afternoon. Can you get here by 3? The scheduler asked. I'll be there, I said, my voice still hoarse from the panic. For the first time in 2 years, I made a medical decision without running it past my husband. Number 2. The knot. Numbers that don't add up. Vanderbilt Endocrine Center smells like antiseptic and coffee, the way all big hospitals do. I sat under the waiting room TV while some daytime show laughed about midlife makeovers and tried not to cry. When Dr. Whitford stepped into the doorway and called Marjorie Hale, I almost didn't recognize her, I'd pictured an older man in a tie. Instead, Sarah Whitford was mid-30s, dark curls pulled back, no nonsense in her eyes. "Come on back," doctor said, holding the door. She didn't start with, "You're 40. This is normal." She started with, "Tell me everything, from the beginning, and then actually let me talk." I told her about the weight gain, the insomnia, the panic, the way my hair collected in my hairbrush like something from a horror movie. I told her about Grant's reassurances, his "this is perimenopause, trust me" tone. "Okay," doctor said finally, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. "We're going to run a full panel. I want estradiol, progesterone, total and free testosterone, cortisol curve, lipids, liver enzymes, the works." They drew 6 vials of blood and told me to wait. I watched raindrops chase each other down the exam room window and tried not to count the breaths between heart palpitations. When Dr. Whitford came back, she had a printout in her hand and a deep frown between her brows. "Estradiol is about 2.5 times the upper limit of normal for your age," doctor said, tapping the page. "Progesterone is practically non-existent. Your testosterone's elevated for a woman, and your morning cortisol is low. Your triglycerides are up. This pattern isn't typical perimenopause." I swallowed. "So, what is it?" "These labs," she said slowly, "look like someone on a slow-release hormone implant. Think of a tiny pellet under the skin that drip-feeds hormone for months." I stared at her. "Doctor, I've never had anything implanted. No pellets, no devices, nothing." "I would remember that." "I have." She looked me dead in the eye. "Have you ever signed a consent form for hormone implants?" "No." "Has anyone ever injected or implanted anything while you were under anesthesia of any kind?" "The only time I'd ever been completely under was 7 years ago, when I had surgery for a Bartholin's gland cyst. Grant arranged it," I said slowly. "He said it was easier if he coordinated with his clinic." I signed whatever his nurse handed me. I was loopy from the meds. Dr. Whitford's jaw tightened. "Marjorie, I want imaging," she said. "Today. An MRI of the right hip region, where implants are commonly placed." I can decreted. Within hours, I was lying in a humming MRI tube, the machine clanging around me. When it was over, they sent me back to the same exam room. The radiologist's preliminary report popped up on the screen while Dr. Reed. "There it is," Dr. Whitford murmured, angling the monitor toward me. On the grayscale image of my own flesh was a thin, bright line, like a dash just beneath the skin of my right hip. Beside it, tiny text. "Tiny polymer rod, about 1/2 centimeter," she said quietly. "Laser-etched code, T713B. "That's an implant, Marjorie." My stomach dropped. "I never agreed to that." "Then we have a serious problem," doctor said. "This type of device requires informed consent. Paperwork. Signatures. If you never consented, this isn't just a medical issue, it's potentially medical battery." The word battery hit me harder than any hormone ever could. "Can we just take it out?" I whispered. "We're going to," Dr. Whitford said. "I want you admitted at Vanderbilt. I'll call Dr. Owens, one of our endocrine surgeons. We also need to document everything. Labs, images, your statement, because this is not something we sweep under the rug." "Do we really have to?" "Law enforcement," I asked, my voice barely there. She held my gaze. "Marjorie, someone altered your body without your consent and has been changing your brain and metabolism for years. That is a crime. I'm obligated to tell you that you have the right to involve the police. I'm also obligated to protect you medically, starting now." For the first time, I saw my life not as me failing my body, but as my body trying to survive something done to it. Number 3. The surgery, what the scalpel finds. The operating room at Vanderbilt was bright, cold, and controlled. They'd numbed my hip and given me light sedation rather than knocking me out completely, I insisted. I didn't trust unconsciousness anymore. Dr. Camilla Owens, the endocrine surgeon, leaned over my draped side. "Marjorie, it's Dr. Owens. We're going to make a small incision and fish this thing out," she said. "You shouldn't feel pain, but you might feel pressure." I focused on the ceiling tiles and counted backwards from 100 anyway. I felt a tugging, a strange pulling sensation deep in my hip. Then Dr. Owens's voice, low but edged. "Got it," doctor said. A nurse held up a small stainless steel tray. On it lay the ugliest half-centimeter of plastic I'd ever seen, yellowed, encased in stringy scar tissue. Along one side, barely visible, was the etched code T713B. "Looks like it's been in there a long time," Dr. Owens murmured. "See the fibrous capsule? And this fatty change in the surrounding tissue." They passed the rod into a labeled specimen cup like it was evidence, and it was. One sample went to pathology for the surrounding tissue. The implant itself went to a lab that could identify manufacturer, lot number, and history. Later, in recovery, Dr. Owens sat beside my bed, still in scrubs, holding a clear container. "This is what's been messing with you," she said quietly, tapping the side of the vial with one gloved finger. We confirmed the code. T713B is a legacy hormone implant. The FDA stopped recommending its use back in 2016 because of long-term metabolic complications, and the tissue around it? She handed me a typed preliminary report. Chronic inflammation, fibrosis, lipid accumulation, stage 2 metabolic changes. This lines up exactly with your labs and your symptoms. Will it get better? I asked, my throat tight. Your numbers should start to normalize over months, Dr. Owen said. But we're not just dealing with physiology here. We're dealing with how this device got into your body in the first place, and we already know the serial number matches an implant that should have been destroyed. I blinked. Destroyed? She nodded. The manufacturer's database shows T713B as part of a batch logged as destroyed in 2017 by Hale Wellness Endocrine Clinic. Hale Wellness. Grant's beige and glass building off Elliston Place. The date of destruction? The 18th of April 2017. The same date, stamped on my discharge summary, for Bartholin cyst excision, under general anesthesia. My chest clenched. Doctor, I only went under that one time in the last 10 years. That surgery. He told me it was easier to do it at his clinic because he'd oversee everything. I've already contacted Detective Cortland, Dr. Owen said. She handles healthcare crimes for the DA's office. This isn't my first case involving non-consensual implants. It doesn't ever get less ugly. I lay there, listening to the beeps of the monitor, staring at the cloudy little rod that had been dictating my moods, my weight, my desire, my tiredness, for 7 years. I'd spent 2 years calling myself lazy, undisciplined, broken, but the proof was sitting in a vial, with my husband's clinic name attached to it. Number 4. The investigation. A detective connects the dots. Detective Lila Cortland walked into my hospital room the next morning with a leather notebook and a badge clipped to her belt. She had the look of someone who'd seen too much and still cared anyway. "Miss Hale?" she asked. "Detective," I said, pushing myself up on the pillows. "You can call me Detective Cortland," she said, pulling a chair over. "First off, I'm sorry you're here at all. Second, I need to ask you some very specific questions so we can figure out who put that implant into your body and when." She clicked on a small recorder. "Name? Marjorie June Hale. Date of birth?" I answered. She started down the list. "In the past 10 years, how many times have you been under general anesthesia?" "Once," I said. "April 2017. Bartholin gland surgery. Grant set it up at Hale Wellness. His surgeon friend was supposed to do it, but he coordinated everything. He said it would be more comfortable and less hassle with insurance that way." "Any other procedures where you were sedated? Colonoscopy? Dental surgery? Anything with conscious sedation?" "No," I said. "I'm weird about anesthesia." Or, I was. I remember being scared and Grant holding my hand until the anesthesiologist put the mask over my face. Detective Cortland jotted notes. "The implant is located along the incision line from that surgery," she said. "The serial number is tied to a batch Hale Wellness reported as destroyed that same week. The log lists your husband as the one who signed off on the destruction." My mouth went dry. "So what does that mean, exactly?" "It means," she said, voice measured, "that the device that was supposed to be destroyed is instead sitting in a lab jar with your name on it. It means someone falsified a destruction log and used that implant on your body without valid consent." She flipped to a printed statute tucked into her notebook. "Under Tennessee law, that's potential aggravated assault. That's medical battery. And if we can prove he altered records to hide it, that's falsification of medical records. Separate charges." Separate penalties. Aggravated assault, I repeated, tasting the words. For the last 7 years, your endocrine system has been manipulated without your knowledge, Detective Cortland said bluntly. That's bodily harm. Serious bodily harm. Something inside me wanted to defend Grant. Even then, he's careful, I said weakly. He's meticulous with his patients. Maybe there's some kind of mix-up. Maybe another doctor at the clinic. She gently cut me off. We're not here to jump to conclusions. We're here to follow the evidence. But the evidence already tells us 3 key things. To 1. The only time you were asleep and unable to consent was a surgery he arranged. 2. The implant is exactly where that surgery took place. 3. The device's serial number is tied to his clinic, his destruction log, his signature. We're going to pull all related records from Hale Wellness inventory logs, or schedules, anesthesia records. We're going to interview staff. If Grant did this, we'll prove it. If he didn't, the paper trail will point elsewhere. She clicked off the recorder. I need you to understand something, Miss Hale, Detective Cortland added quietly. People commit crimes against strangers. It's terrible, but it's easier to process. When someone commits this kind of crime against their own spouse, they count on you not believing your own intuition. They count on love to cover their tracks. I thought of every time Grant had patted my hand and said, "You're overthinking it. Trust me. I'm the endocrinologist." My gut, that quiet voice that had whispered something is being done to you, flared in my chest. I want to press charges, I heard myself say. If the evidence shows it was him, I want this on record. She nodded once. Then we'll do this right. Number 5. The clinic. The other family. 3 days after surgery, I signed myself out of Vanderbilt with doctor's blessing and Detective Cortland's instructions ringing in my ears. Do not delete anything, Detective Cortland had said. Do not confront him at the clinic. Go in like you're collecting paperwork. Photograph what you can. If things feel unsafe, call me from the parking lot. Hale Wellness looked exactly the same as it always had. Brushed steel logo, frosted glass doors, tasteful fiddle leaf fig in the lobby. That morning, though, the air felt thicker, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The front desk girl gave me a slightly awkward smile. Mrs. Hale, we weren't expecting you. We thought you were in the hospital. I was, I said evenly. I'm here under instruction from Detective Cortland to pick up some inventory records. I'll be quick. I still knew the key code to Grant's office. He'd never changed it. Inside, the same oak desk, same framed diplomas, same photo of us in Destin, him with his hand on my waist like he owned my body then, too. I went straight to the beige safe in the corner. The combination was his father's birthday. My hands shook as I spun the dial. Inside were the things he called critical insurance binders, high-value medication logs, a worn leather notebook. The 2017 supply log for devices and implants was thicker than the others. I flipped to April, and there it was, in blue ink I knew as well as my own. Is greater than destroy. Implant T, 713, B, G, Hale. Right next to a little box that should have contained the initials of the staffer who actually carried out the destruction. The box was blank. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of the page. Then the cover, then the inside front with the clinic header and year. The office door clicked behind me. I turned. A young woman in teal scrubs stood there, a hand halfway behind her back as if she'd been about to tuck something into a pocket. Madeline Quinn. I'd seen her at a few holiday parties fresh out of nursing school. Bright, eager, laughing at Grant's jokes a little too hard. Grant said you were still at Vanderbilt, she blurted, eyes wide. He texted the group chat. Marjorie, what are you doing here? I glanced at the white plastic stick in her hand before she could shove it out of sight. 2 unmistakable pink lines stared back at both of us. That looks pretty positive, I said, my voice strangely calm. She paled. It's personal. Avran. On her wrist, stacked with her Fitbit, was a thin silver bracelet identical to the one Grant had given me on our 15th anniversary. Same hammered finish, same clasp. Before either of us could speak again, the waiting room door opened, and a patient walked past us toward the exit, a woman in her early 60s I'd seen around the clinic, wearing a thrift store winter coat and a tired smile. She paused, hand on Madeline's arm. Thank you again, honey, the woman said warmly. Dr. Hale is a saint. Paying my rent this month so I don't get behind. I don't know what we would have done without him. Of course, Madeline murmured. He really wanted to help. BK, the patient turned to me. Oblivious. You must be Mrs. Hale, she said. Your husband is an angel. The words hit like a slap. When she left, the hallway went quiet. Just the hum of the soda machine and the ring of a distant phone. I stepped closer to Madeline. How many lives is Grant supporting these days? I asked softly. And how many of them know about each other? She swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean. You're holding a pregnancy test, I said. You're wearing my bracelet. A patient just thanked him for paying her rent. If I'm wrong, tell me. Right now. Her eyes filled. The stick rattled slightly in her hand. You don't understand, she whispered. Grant loves me. He said you were done. That you were sick and didn't want to be a wife anymore. He said he was trapped. What else did he say? I asked. Be specific, Madeline. You need to tell the truth. He said you hit menopause at 35, she blurted. That your hormones were a mess. That you hated the idea of kids. He said he stayed out of obligation. He said he finally found someone who wanted the same future he did. And Emery? I asked, feeling my knees go weak even as my voice stayed steady. Does he call her by her name or just that little complication? Her face crumpled. He calls her Emery, she said. He calls her his sunshine. I didn't for wealth. You have a 3-year-old with my husband, I said, not as a question. And you're pregnant again. Yes, she whispered. But he told me he was leaving. He said it just had to be at the right time, after your health got worse, so people wouldn't blame him. He said it would look cruel to leave a sick wife. I had to grip the edge of the file cabinet to stay upright. Behind Madeline, through the narrow office window, I could see the clinic logo etched into the glass. Hale Wellness. Balance for life. I wanted to laugh and scream and throw up, all at once. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and texted Detective Cortland a single line. Is greater than he has a secret family. I have pictures and a witness. Call me. Number 6. The house. The files that burn. That night, after meeting with Detective Cortland in the parking lot and handing over the photos from the logbook, I drove home to the brick house in East Nashville that I'd painted, decorated, and paid half the mortgage on. The house felt different, like it was watching me. I walked straight past the dining room where we'd hosted Thanksgiving for his residents, past the gallery wall of our vacation photos, into his home office. His laptop sat on the desk, screen dark. I'd watched him tap in the password 1,000 times when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I tried his mother's birth date, month and day. Denied. I tried our anniversary. Denied. Then I typed the one he used for the Netflix account and the garage keypad, the one he swore me to secrecy about, because it ties everything together. The desktop bloomed to life. He kept things meticulously organized. Patient folders in one cluster. Research articles in another. And then, a folder that didn't fit the pattern, its icon a simple gray file with the name Balance Files. I clicked. Inside were subfolders. MJH Hormone Cycle Management. Private. MQ Life. Emery. Property. Confidential. My initials. Madeline's initials. Their child's name. My fingers went numb. I opened the PDF labeled MJH Hormone Cycle Management. Private. Page after page of neatly plotted graphs appeared: estradiol levels, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol each month for the last 7 years. Notes in the margin. Is greater than implant response stable, fatigue increasing. Good. Is greater than libido score. Reported 0x. 3 visits. Emotional volatility down. Is greater than weight gain. Plus 28 pounds over 24 months, supportive of chronic illness narrative. I scrolled faster, the words blurring. He'd been treating me like a lab rat, tracking not my healing, but the effectiveness of my weakening. In another folder were photos, date-stamped. Grant at Shelby Park, a child with curls on his shoulders, her face smeared with ice cream. Grant at a Christmas tree lot, holding a toddler, while Madeline laughed. Grant in a cheap inflatable pool in a townhouse backyard, Emery splashing water at his neck. In the corner of each image, The metadata showed the same address in East Nashville. Not our house. A rental we'd driven past once when he'd said, "These townhomes are popping up everywhere." I opened the Zelle, transfers, MQ, XLSX file. Every month, $2,200 labeled rent, $300 labeled utilities, smaller amounts marked Emery's preschool, pediatrician, Target run. He hadn't just built a separate family. He'd built a separate budget for them. And then there was the email. Is greater than 2. Madeline.q@halewellness.com. Mailto. Madeline.q@halewellness.com. Is greater than from. G.hale@halewellness.com. Mailto. G.hale@halewellness.com. Is greater than subject. Progress. Is greater than Maddie. Is greater than. She's calmer now. The implant keeps her tired. The weight gain makes her self-conscious. The more she sees herself as sick, the easier the divorce will be when the time is right. No explosive scenes, no drama. Just a marriage that ran its course with a chronically ill wife who doesn't want intimacy. Is greater than give it 3 or 4 more years. Once the labs show enough damage, everyone will understand why I had to leave. In the meantime, you and Emery are my real home. The townhouse is just the first step. Is greater than G. I read it 3 times. Somewhere between the second and third reading, something in me shattered so completely it turned into something else, something harder. I plugged a flash drive into the side of the laptop and started copying. The hormone management PDF, the Zelle spreadsheets, the townhouse deed with Madeline's name in bold, the life insurance policy listing little Emery as beneficiary, Grant as owner, every email where he used my initials and the phrase implant response. While the progress bar crawled, my phone buzzed. Detective Cortland. Is greater than we got your photos. Lab confirmed T713B from Hale Wellness. We're drafting a search warrant. Don't delete anything on that computer. And Marjorie, if he comes home early, don't try to play hero. Step out and call 911. I texted back. Is greater than I'm copying everything now. He's in Denver. I'll be careful. But when I hit send, I heard a sound I wasn't expecting for another day. The garage door rumbled open beneath my feet. Number 7. The confrontation. The arrest in the living room. Marge? Grant's voice floated up the stairs, cheery, familiar, vile now that I knew the truth. I came home a day early. Got you something from the conference. My hands flew to the flash drive. I yanked it out, shoved it into my jeans pocket, and minimized the window, leaving one email open on the screen, the one about the implant. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small steel specimen box. Dr. Owens had given me empty now, but with the lab sticker and T713B still clearly printed. I set it on the desk in front of the monitor and waited. He stepped into the doorway, in travel khakis and an open collar shirt, a bouquet of white lilies in one hand. My nose itched at the sight. I'm allergic to them. He's always said they're poetic. Hey, you, Grant said, smile wide. They discharged you already? Why didn't you call? I would have. The smile died as his eyes tracked from my face to the email on the screen, to the specimen box, back to me. The lilies slipped from his hand and hit the hardwood with a soft thud, petals scattering. What are you doing on my computer? He asked, voice suddenly very tight. Marjorie, that's a violation of my privacy. You have no right to be in my files. You're worried about your privacy? I asked, my voice so calm it surprised me. After you implanted a device in my body without my consent and used it to slowly dismantle my health? Sweat beaded instantly at his hairline. You're confused, Grant said quickly. You forgot, that's all. We talked about hormone therapy before your surgery in 2017. You signed the consent. You wanted help. You begged me to do something. I picked up the specimen box, held it up between us. This is T713B, I said. The lab traced it to your clinic. Your destruction log says you destroyed it. Your signature. Why is a destroyed implant the same one we just cut out of my hip, Grant? He took a step into the room, palms up, the picture of a reasonable man talking down a hysterical wife. Marge, listen. Those logs, there are clerical errors all the time. Devices get misscanned. Nurses click the wrong box. You don't understand how complex inventory is. A presenter Everett. I understand Zella transfers, I said, nodding toward the minimized window. I understand townhome deeds. I understand spreadsheets labeled MJH hormone cycle management, private that track how tired and heavy and numb I've been. You lied to me for 7 years and called it treatment. His eyes flicked to the lower right corner of the monitor. Windows makes a little sound when something finishes copying. He must have noticed too. The corner showed the recently mounted drive that had just been ejected. What did you download? He demanded, his voice sharpening. Enough, I said. Enough for Detective Cortland to not need anything from your mouth. He lunged for the keyboard. Instinct took over. I stepped sideways, clutching the specimen box and knocking his wrist away with the other hand. Don't you dare touch that, I snapped. Marjorie, you're spiraling, Grant said, dropping his voice into the silky tone he used on anxious patients. You just woke up from surgery. These accusations, this paranoia, this is exactly why you needed help in the first place. This is why I did what I did. To stabilize you. You did this to make me easier to leave, I said. You did this so I'd look like the sick, unstable wife while you moved in with Madeline and your sunshine. He flinched at her name. Stay out of this, he hissed. You have no idea what she's been through. What I've done for her. You mean paying her rent? I asked. Buying her a townhouse? Putting your name on life insurance for Emery while telling me we couldn't afford kids? Color drained from his face. How long have you been hacking my files? He demanded. This is criminal, Marjorie. I will tell the board you're unstable. I will. A firm knock echoed from the front door downstairs. Then again. Then the unmistakable sound of the deadbolt turning. Grant Hale, a woman's voice called. Metro Police. We have a warrant. His eyes went wild. You called the cops on me? He whispered. No, I said. Your own paperwork did. It's not a create. Detective Cortland appeared in the doorway a moment later, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. She took in the scene in an instant, dropped Lily's, the open inbox, the specimen box in my hand, Grant's clenched jaw. Mr. Hale, Detective Cortland said, voice cool and official now. Or should I say Dr. Hale? I'm Detective Cortland. You are under arrest for aggravated assault, medical battery, and falsification of medical records. This is insane, he blurted. You can't just barge into my home and... She held up the folded paper. We have a signed warrant from a Davidson County judge, she said. We've seized records from Hale Wellness. We have the implant that bears your clinic's destruction code. We have logs you signed. We also have digital files showing you monitored your wife's hormone response to an unconsented implant over several years. You have the right to remain silent. Marge, Grant said, turning back to me as the officer stepped closer with handcuffs. Tell them. Tell them you agreed. You didn't want kids. You said your body. I said I was tired. I cut in. You made sure I stayed that way. Footsteps pounded up the stairs behind Detective Cortland. Madeline appeared at the top landing, face tear-streaked, one hand on the rail, the other clutching her phone. Grant, she sobbed. They served papers at the clinic. They said I had to come in and... She stopped when she saw the cuffs. Madeline, Detective Cortland said without turning her head, you are not under arrest, but you are a key witness. We're going to need your full statement about what Grant told you regarding his wife's health and this implant. Madeline looked back and forth between us like a child in a nightmare. He told me you were sick, she whispered to me. He said you couldn't handle being a mom. He said the implant was a gift, that it freed you and let him have the family he'd always wanted. A gift, I repeated softly, fingers tightening around the empty specimen box. That's one word for it. The officer slid the cuffs around Grant's wrists. He winced. This is a mistake, he said, now directing his plea to Detective Cortland. I am a respected physician. I have helped hundreds of patients. My wife is mentally unstable. She's always been dramatic. You're letting her rewrite history in the middle of some hormone-induced episode. We have your own words in writing, Mr. Hale, she said, including the part where you call the implant a permanent solution to your marriage problem. He went quiet. As they led him past me, he twisted his shoulders to catch my eye. We could fix this, he said desperately. I could get you the best care. We could say the implant was a mistake, a mix-up. Don't throw away 18 years over one decision. You threw it away the night you signed that log, I said. And every day, you watched me drown in symptoms you designed. They took him down the stairs. The front door opened, then shut. The house was suddenly, profoundly still. Madeline stayed in the doorway, shoulders shaking. "I swear I didn't know," she whispered. "If I had known he did this to you, I never would have." I believed her, not because I wanted to spare her, but because I could see the exact moment her illusion cracked, the same way mine had. "How old are you?" I asked. 25, she said, swiping at her cheeks. "He picked you fresh out of school," I said quietly. "Young enough to believe everything he said. Old enough to sign things he needed signed." "What's going to happen to us?" she asked. "To me and Emery?" "That's not my call," I said. "But I can tell you this much. You're not the one being led out of here in handcuffs." Downstairs, Detective Cortland called up gently, "Miss Quinn, we need to head downtown now, if you're ready." Madeline took a ragged breath and nodded. "Tell the truth, Maddie," I said. "Every word. It's the only way out of this for any of us." She met my eyes one last time, then turned and followed Detective Cortland down the stairs. I stood there alone in the doorway of Grant's office, scattered lilies at my feet, my own reflection faint in the dark computer screen. The man I'd loved for 18 years was gone. Maybe he'd never existed at all. What remained was me and the truth. Number 8. The trial, balance sheets, and verdicts. By the time Grant's case went to trial in Davidson County Criminal Court, local reporters had already slapped a name on it: the Hormone husband. They ran clips of him in a suit outside his clinic, talking about optimization and patient empowerment, while voiceovers explained how he'd secretly implanted his own wife and monitored her like a case study. The courthouse steps filled with cameras the day jury selection finished. In the courtroom, he looked smaller. No white coat, no polished clinic backdrop, just a gray suit, a striped tie, and the orange undertone of county jail time showing at the edges. His lawyer tried to set the tone in opening statements. "This is a case about a medical misunderstanding," he told the jurors. "About a doctor who, under stress, made a poor documentation decision, but who never intended harm." Then the state started calling witnesses, and the word misunderstanding shriveled in the air. Dr. Whitford went first, hair neat, blazer sharp. "Dr. Whitford," the prosecutor said, "in your expert opinion, do Miss Hale's lab results and symptoms align with natural perimenopause?" "No," doctor said unequivocally. "They align with exogenous hormone administration, specifically a slow-release implant. The estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol profile, and lipid changes are textbook for that pattern, not for age-related ovarian decline." She explained the imaging. The implant, the T713B serial number. "So, when Miss Hale told you she'd never consented to an implant, what did that mean to you professionally?" the prosecutor asked. "It meant," doctor said, "that someone had placed a device in her body without informed consent, exposing her to years of metabolic risk." Dr. Owens followed, bringing the actual implant in a sealed evidence container for the court to see. "This device," Dr. Owens told the jury, "sat in Miss Hale's tissue for approximately 7 years. The surrounding tissue showed chronic inflammation and early metabolic damage. Based on FDA records, T713B hasn't been recommended for use since 2016 due to these risks." The prosecutor held up a blown-up copy of the Hale Wellness Destruction Log, the entry labeled "Destroy. Implant T713B, G. Hale." "And this log?" he asked Dr. Owens. "It indicates the device should never have been used on any patient," she said. "It certainly should not have been present in Miss Hale's body." I mastery. Madeline took the stand on the second day, hands twisting in her lap, a tissue clenched between her fingers. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor said. "Madeline Quinn," she said. "And your relationship to the defendant?" She took a breath. "I was a nurse at Hale Wellness, and I was involved with Grant. We have a daughter together. He pays our rent. He bought the townhouse in my name." "What did Mr. Hale tell you about his wife?" the prosecutor asked. "He said she was basically done," she said. "That she was sick all the time, depressed, didn't want to be intimate, didn't want kids. He said he'd taken care of things during a surgery years ago so there wouldn't be any accidents. He called it a permanent solution." "Did he ever mention the word implant?" "Yes," she whispered. "He said the implant made her calmer, less likely to fight about things. He said it would make the divorce cleaner once her lab work looked bad enough. Behind me, I heard an audible gasp from someone's throat. The judge rapped her gavel once. On cross-examination, the defense tried to paint Madeline as a scorned mistress, angry he was now in jail. "Isn't it true you stand to gain financially if Mr. Hale is imprisoned?" his attorney asked. "Sympathy, support, maybe even a book deal." "No," she said, voice shaking but steady. "The only thing I stand to gain is the truth. For me. For Marjorie. For my daughter." A digital forensic analyst took the stand next. "We imaged Mr. Hale's home and clinic computers," he testified. "We recovered PDFs, spreadsheets, and emails referencing MJH hormone cycle management and tracking Miss Hale's symptoms and lab values over 7 years. These files also include statements about the implant being a permanent solution and making the eventual divorce easier." He clicked through slides showing my name in subject lines, my initials next to graphs, Grant's words about my implant response. End quote. When it was my turn, my legs trembled, but my voice surprised me. I told the jury about the parking garage panic attack, about Grant brushing me off as stressed, about the late-night crying I blamed on my own weakness. "I thought I was just failing at being a human being," I said. "Every time I complained, he told me it was normal. He wrote prescriptions. He told me not to Google. I trusted him more than I trusted myself. I told them about Dr. Whitford's labs, the MRI, seeing the implant on the screen, watching Dr. Owens pull it out of me, holding the vial, and then I told them about balance files. He didn't just do this and forget about it," I said. "He tracked me, charted me, fine-tuned dosages to keep me right where he wanted, too tired to question, too ashamed of my weight, too foggy to push back." The defense attorney tried to suggest I was misremembering, that I'd conflated normal marital dissatisfaction with criminal intent. "Miss Hale," he said, "is it possible your perception of events is colored by resentment and the knowledge of your husband's affair?" I looked him right in the eye. "What colors my perception," I said, "is 7 years of lab work, an implant that never should have been in my body, a destruction log with my husband's signature, emails where he talks about me like I'm an obstacle he solved. You can call that resentment if you want. I call it evidence." When both sides rested, Judge Ramirez gave the jury her instructions and sent them out. It took them less than 4 hours. On count 1, aggravated assault resulting in serious bodily injury. "How do you find the defendant?" The clerk read. "Guilty," the foreperson said. On count 2, medical battery, non-consensual implantation of a medical device. "How do you find the defendant?" Guilty. On count 3, falsification of medical records with intent to defraud. "How do you find the defendant?" Guilty. End quote. Grant didn't look at me when the judge pronounced sentence. 6 years in state prison, permanent revocation of his medical license, restitution for all my past and future treatment, and a mandatory psychological evaluation. He stared at the table instead, jaws clenched, as the cuffs closed around his wrists again. When they led him past me, I felt no urge to reach out, no urge to forgive, just a surprising, quiet sense of balance, like a ledger that finally, brutally, added up. Number 9. Aftermath. New balance. A year later, I hardly recognize the woman in the courthouse videos. My hair is shorter now, a blunt bob that actually suits my face. I've lost 27 pounds, slowly, without punishing myself. My lab results line up in the normal range, like a row of clean numbers on a spreadsheet. Most mornings, I lace up worn running shoes and jog the loop at Shelby Bottoms Greenway, watching the sunrise burn the fog off the river. My heart still races sometimes, but now it does it for the right reasons. Dr. Whitford, Sarah, now, outside the clinic, meets me for coffee after my follow-up appointments. What started as doctor-patient check-ins turned into long talks about books, and then about music, and then about the quiet ways women carry other people's weight until their knees buckle. She was the first medical professional who believed me without flinching. Somewhere between the second and third cup of coffee, she became more than my endocrinologist. "You know your labs look beautiful, right?" Sarah said last month, sliding the paper across the table at barista parlor. I looked. Numbers in range, cholesterol behaving, cortisol curve where it belonged. "Doctor," I said, just to tease her. She rolled her eyes. Say it right. Sarah. I corrected, smiling. Thank you. For listening. For everything. Informed consent goes both ways, she said. You trusted me. That matters. Madeline did what she promised on the stand. She told the truth. She also enrolled in an advanced nursing program at night, working toward becoming a nurse practitioner. When her class schedule got heavy and the childcare costs started strangling her budget, she came to me one afternoon, twisting her bracelet. Can I ask you something big? She said. If it's too much, tell me to get lost. What is it, Maddie? I asked. Would you consider taking Emery a few days a week? She asked. Just so I can go to class and clinicals without leaving her with whoever's cheapest. I don't trust daycare anymore. Not after all this. It's not the Taranians from. The first time Emery toddled into my living room with her stuffed fox and her juice box, she climbed onto my couch like she'd always belonged there. Come here, sweetheart, I said, surprised by how natural the word felt. Show me your fox. We built a schedule. Some weeks it's 2 days. Some weeks it's 4. On paper, I'm her temporary guardian when Madeline has to travel for clinical rotations. In my heart, she's more than that. The state will decide the legal labels foster, kin-like, permanent custody. But when Emery looks up at me from her coloring book and says, Honey, can you help me find the blue? I feel something settle in my chest that no hormone ever could. I don't pretend everything is tidy. Trauma doesn't disappear on a timetable. Some nights, I still jolt awake convinced there's something else inside me I didn't agree to. On those nights, I walk to the bathroom, flip on the light, and look myself in the mirror. I see the scar on my hip. I see the dark circles that have faded, but not vanished. I see a woman who finally believes her own body when it says, something's wrong. I put a hand over my chest and remind myself, I am not a lab project. I am not a variable in a man's exit strategy. I am the one who decides what happens to my body now. If you're listening to this, and some part of your story echoes mine, I want you to hear this too. You are not too emotional. You are not overreacting. If that quiet voice inside keeps whispering that something doesn't line up, that the explanations don't fit the facts, listen to it. That's not paranoia. That's a survival instinct. The greatest act of love you can offer anyone, including a husband in a white coat, is the fierce protection of your own truth. My name is Marjorie. I lost 7 years of my life to a device I never agreed to, implanted by the man I thought would protect me. I gained a second life when I decided to believe myself instead of him. Now, every morning I lace up my shoes, kiss Emery's curls when she's with me, and text Sarah bad memes about endocrine conferences. My body isn't perfect. My past isn't pretty. But my future? That finally feels like it belongs to me. If this story hits something in you, if you've ever been told it's all in your head when your bones know otherwise, tell someone. Write it down. Ask for the labs. Ask for the second opinion. You're not a burden for wanting proof. And if you want to keep walking through stories like this with me, stories about women who find their way back to themselves after betrayal and control, stick around. Share this with someone whose light feels dimmer than it should. Leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what your gut is telling you these days. Because the more we say these things out loud, the harder it becomes for anyone, no matter how charming, no matter how credentialed, to quietly rewrite our lives without our consent. The only issue here is not his technique, which is excellent, but the ethics of doing it without documented consent. The defense tried to suggest that Andrew's narration was generic teaching language, that he'd used a template and not updated it. Harris shut that down with a raised eyebrow. I've been in practice for 25 years, he said. We do not template taking out organs. Digital forensic experts testified about the altered operative note, the timestamps showing the change, the IP address tying it to Andrew's office computer. Another expert walked the jury through the email chains, the financial transfers, the drafted postmarital agreement. Then Chloe took the stand. I watched her walk to the witness chair in a simple blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back. She looked older than when I'd first seen her. Some of the softness burned away. Miss Benson, the prosecutor said gently, can you tell the jury how you met the defendant? I was his patient, she said. I tore my ACL playing pickup soccer and had surgery at his center. He was charming and attentive. He called to check on me himself. He told me his marriage was over in everything but name, that his wife hated kids, that she was cold, that they slept in separate rooms. I believed him. 8. She described how their relationship had turned romantic, how Lily had been conceived, how Andrew had been with her in the delivery room. He told me he couldn't leave Marilyn right away because she was delicate, Chloe said, tears standing in her eyes. He said she was mentally fragile, that she might hurt herself if he blindsided her. He said she'd never been able to have kids, that there was some genetic thing. That made me feel less guilty about having Lily. The prosecutor handed her a printed email. "Do you recognize this?" she asked. "Yes," Chloe said. "It's from Andrew. He sent it to me weeks before Marilyn's surgery. I found." She read it aloud, the part about handling my baby issue, about me chalking symptoms up to getting older, about Chloe and Lily being his real family. "What did you think he meant when you read that?" the prosecutor asked. "I thought he meant he was finally going to be honest with her," Chloe said, "that he was going to tell her he didn't want kids with her and ask for a divorce." "I did not think." Her voice wavered. "I didn't think he meant he was going to cut out parts of her without telling her." The defense tried to paint Chloe as a jilted lover, bitter and motivated to lie. She held steady. "I wish I was lying," she said quietly at one point. "Then maybe this would hurt less." It was. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand in a black dress I'd bought at Target. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. My palms were slick against the rail as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Cooper," the prosecutor said, "can you tell the jury how you felt when you learned your ovary was missing?" I looked at the 12 faces in the box, men and women. Some middle-aged, some young, one older man with a hearing aid leaning forward like he didn't want to miss a word. "I felt crazy," I said, like the world had flipped and I was the only one who realized we were upside down. I had spent 5 years being told my pain, my bleeding, my hot flashes were normal, that I was overreacting, that I was reading too much online. When Dr. Wells showed me the imaging, I thought, how could I not know? How could I not have been told? And then I thought, who benefits from me not knowing? I described the night on the bathroom floor, the day on the bridge, the first appointment with Naomi. I spoke about Andrew's reassurances, his prescriptions, his jokes about my perimenopausal brain. "We'd talked about kids," I said. "Not constantly, but enough. We had a bedroom picked out that we called the someday room. We had names we liked. I blamed myself for years, thinking I'd waited too long. That my body had betrayed me. Turns out it wasn't my body that betrayed me." The defense attorney asked his questions, trying to prod at any inconsistency. "Is it possible," he asked at one point, "that Dr. Cooper discussed the possibility of removing the ovary and you simply don't remember?" "If my husband had told me he wanted to take out my ovary, I would remember," I said. "If a mechanic tells you they changed your oil instead of your engine, you remember. This is not a detail you mishear." He asked whether I might have had unconscious hostility about Andrew's demanding job, whether I resented his income, his ego, his late nights. "I resented him not doing the dishes sometimes," I said. A ripple of quiet laughter ran through the courtroom. I did not resent him enough to fabricate surgical footage, altered notes, and emails he wrote with his own hands. In closing arguments, the prosecutor didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Consent does not end when you sign a marriage license," she told the jury. "Being a husband does not give you the right to carve up your wife's body to make your life more convenient. Being a doctor does not put you above the law. Every woman in this room has lived with the fear that her concerns will be dismissed as hormones. In this case, that fear was weaponized to mask a felony. The defense tried to salvage something: stress, burnout, a man pushed too far by the demands of surgery and marriage. "He made a mistake," the lawyer said. "A terrible one, but a mistake." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they filed back in, my hands shook so badly I had to lace my fingers together. "Madam Foreperson," Judge Morales said, "has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor," the woman in the front row said. "In the matter of the State of Oregon v. Andrew Cooper, on the charge of assault in the first degree, how do you find guilty? On the charge of unauthorized sterilization, how do you find guilty? Okay. On the charge of tampering with public records, how do you find guilty?" Andrew didn't look at me. His shoulders sagged as if someone had taken a scalpel to the string holding him upright. At sentencing a month later, the courtroom was less crowded. The spectacle was over. What remained was numbers and years and restitution. Judge Morales looked at Andrew over the rim of her glasses. "Mr. Cooper," she said, "you took vows as a physician and as a husband. You violated both in ways this court finds egregious. You used your medical skill to commit violence against someone who trusted you. You then attempted to cover it up, to gaslight her, to profit from the harm you caused. And she sentenced him to 7 years in state prison, the maximum under the plea-adjusted guidelines for the combination of charges, followed by 3 years of post-prison supervision. She ordered permanent revocation of his medical license. She ordered him to pay significant financial damages to me for pain and suffering, lost reproductive capacity, and lifelong medical monitoring. When it was my turn to speak at sentencing, I walked to the podium with a single sheet of paper. I didn't read from it. "I can't get my ovary back," I said. "I can't get back the years I spent thinking I was just weak or dramatic or too busy to be a mother. What I can get back is my voice, my ability to say, 'This happened,' and have people believe me. I am not asking for vengeance. I am asking for a clear message that no one, no matter how many letters they have after their name, can take a woman's bodily autonomy and call it love." I looked at Andrew for the first time since the verdict. He finally looked back. There was no apology in his eyes, no understanding, just a hollow outrage, like the world had betrayed him by enforcing rules he thought he was above. I turned away. Some losses are permanent, so are some freedoms. 9. Aftermath. Rebuilding and reclaiming my body. A year later, I wake up in a different house. It's a small rented place on the edge of Forest Park, nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with creaky floors, a little deck out back, and enough trees that when the wind blows, I can pretend I live in the woods. The someday room here is not waiting for a hypothetical baby from my body. It's painted a bright blue, covered in dinosaur posters and piles of library books. There's a lava lamp on the dresser and a hand-lettered sign taped to the wall that reads, "This room belongs to Jaden." Jaden is 8. He came into my life through the Oregon foster care system. His mom died after a complicated abdominal surgery at another hospital in another city. His dad was never in the picture. He has a scar that runs from his sternum to his belly button and a lot of questions about why adults leave. The first time I met him, he sat across from me in a social worker's office, swinging his legs. "You look normal," he said, like he was mildly disappointed. "I get that a lot," I said. He grinned, then sobered. "Do you, send kids back?" "No," I said. "I return library books. I return shopping carts. I don't return kids." Now, on a Tuesday morning, I knock on his door. "Hey, kiddo," I call. "You're going to miss the bus if you keep arguing with your socks." He emerges, hair sticking up, t-shirt backward, socks mismatched. "I like them like this," he says, wiggling his toes. "They're a vibe." "Your vibe can't be tardy again," I say, ruffling his hair. "Eat your cereal." At the kitchen table, he digs into a bowl of Cheerios while talking around mouthfuls about the dinosaur unit they're starting at school. "Miss Clark says some dinosaurs had feathers," he says, scandalized. "That's fake. That's science," I say. "Sometimes it's weirder than movies." "You're weirder than movies," he says, then pauses. In a good way. I kiss the top of his head. "Flattery will get you exactly 1 extra fruit snack in your lunch." After he's on the bus, I drive up the hill to OHSU. The route is muscle memory by now, curves up the hill, that view of the city that still steals my breath when the clouds cooperate. In the gynecologic oncology waiting room, where I've now spent more hours than I want to count, not for cancer, but for the kind of long-term monitoring you get after 5 years of unregulated hormonal chaos, I sit in a chair by the window and fill out yet another symptom questionnaire. When Harris comes out to get me, he's in scrubs, his hair slightly mussed like he's been in the OR. "Marilyn," he says, smiling, "come on back." In the exam room, he reviews my chart on the tablet. "Bone density's holding steady," he says. "Cholesterol looks good. Your estradiol level is right where we want it on your current HRT dose. How are you feeling?" "Strong," I say. "Tired sometimes, but that might be more 8-year-old than endocrine." He chuckles. "Fair." He looks up from the tablet, expression more serious. "I know we've talked about this before," he says, "but I want to circle back, given you're a year out from the trial. There are some options. We could consider adjusting your hormones, maybe even exploring egg donation and gestational carriers if being a parent in that way is something you still want. He pauses. But I don't want to assume. That's why I'm asking. End quote. There it is, the question that, for 16 years, nobody had genuinely put on the table for me to answer without an agenda. Marilyn, do you want this? He asks. The past year flashes through my mind not as a montage of trauma, but as moments of choice. Signing a lease in my own name. Choosing a bright blue paint color, because Jaden said it reminded him of a video game sky. Sitting in a support group for women who'd been harmed by partners, saying, "My name is Marilyn, and my husband cut out my ovary," and having 12 heads nod like I'd said something ordinary. Standing outside the prison the day Andrew was transferred, not to gloat, but to watch the van pull away and feel, deep in my bones, that his choices no longer defined the boundaries of my life. I think about Jaden asking, "Are you my forever?" And me saying, as much as the state of Oregon and my fingerprints on a stack of papers can make it, yes. I think about how my body still wakes sometimes at 3 a.m., with a phantom hot flash, and how I put a hand on my chest and remind myself, "You're okay. You're safe. You're in charge now." I look at Harris. "I want to be a parent." I say, "I am one." Not how I thought, but it's real. And I'm happy. I exhale. As for pregnancy, I don't think I want to put my body through that. Not now. Not after everything. Maybe if things had been different before. But the idea of more people in white coats making decisions about my insides makes me want to run screaming. He nods. "Then we don't do that," he says simply. "We stick with what's keeping you healthy and feeling like yourself. And if you ever change your mind, we revisit. You call the shots." Something loosens in my chest. "Thank you," I say. "For asking. For not assuming. Bare minimum," he says. Then his mouth quirks. "Also, I've got a new hiking trail to show you in Forest Park if you and Jaden are up for it this weekend. Strictly as your physician, of course. Exercise is good for bone density." I laugh. "Is that your medical opinion?" "Absolutely," he says. "Doctor's orders." As I walk out of the hospital, the south waterfront spread out below, the Willamette slicing through the city. I think about the women who sit in waiting rooms like this every day, wondering if their pain will be believed, if their questions will be dismissed as hormonal, if their bodies are truly theirs. If I could, I would sit next to every one of them and say, "You are not crazy for wanting answers. You are not difficult for asking to see the chart, for wanting a second opinion, for saying, 'No, that doesn't feel right.' No diploma, no wedding band, no white coat overrides your right to know what is being done to your body and why." Andrew thought being a surgeon and a husband gave him the right to decide my future in secret. He was wrong. He lost his license, his freedom, and his carefully curated reputation. I lost an ovary and the possibility of ever seeing a plus sign on a pregnancy test with my own DNA. But I gained something he never understood the value of. An unshakable understanding that my body is mine. My story is mine. My choices are mine. At my support group, when it's my turn to share, I always end the same way. If there's one thing I want you to take from what happened to me, I tell the circle of women, it's this. No one gets to edit your consent after the fact, not with a pen, not with a scalpel, not with "I was stressed" or "I thought it was for the best." If your gut says something is wrong, listen, ask, walk away, call a different doctor, call a detective if you have to. You are not overreacting, you are protecting yourself. Sometimes they nod, sometimes they cry, sometimes they just stare at the floor and squeeze my hand after. On the drive home, I roll down the window and let the damp Oregon air wash over me. When I pull into the driveway, Jaden is on the porch, swinging his legs and holding a piece of paper. "Look," he says as I climb the steps, "I got a gold star in science. I'm basically a genius." I take the paper, ruffle his hair. "I never doubted it for a second, honey," I say. He leans into me for a second longer than usual. "Are we still doing movie night?" he asks. "Yep," I say. "You, me, dinosaurs with feathers. It's a vibe." He laughs and runs inside. I stand there for one more breath, looking at the little house, the toys in the yard, The messy reality of a life that is not what I planned but is fully, completely mine. No surgeon decided that. I did?